Hey there, welcome to episode 11 of this Koala Sampler tutorial series, and today we're going to be looking at the sort of Auto Chop Samurai Edition add-on that you get for Koala Sampler, and why I think it's definitely worth the purchase. So what I've got here is a couple of samples from some of the other videos that we've been using, but we got this drum loop. Now let's say I wanted to split this drum loop up, and I want to, have like the kicks and the snares and all the things separate. It's pretty easy without the auto chop feature. I can just take some of these pads, say I want X amount. Say this first one, I just want the kick drum. I can move my endpoint there. There's kick drum. I want this next one to be the hi-hat. So again, we can move our starting point, bring that over. And then here, we want the snare. So we're just going to take that and we'll do that. And we can split them that way. You don't necessarily need the auto chop feature, but for the extra couple of quid that it is, and I think it was about £2, something like that, it just makes your life a lot easier. So let's get rid of those and we'll dive into this feature. So we click on our pad as we usually do. We open up our edit window, and there's a whole video on the edit window just in case you're finding this out of sequence. Go into our tools here. Then go into Auto Chop, and that's going to give us this Auto Chop menu. Now, as we open it up, we've got these three tabs across the top. The first one is transients. So what it's going to do is it's going to try and find the transients for you, where it thinks these wave files are, and start putting some slices in. Now, the way you adjust that is by using this sensitivity slider here. And as you can see, as I put the sensitivity up, it finds more and more of the slices that I want, and it's pretty darn accurate. Doesn't really matter if some of these, you can see here, this isn't quite at the beginning of the sample. You don't have to worry about that because as soon as it's sliced to the pad, you've still got all your editing capabilities then, so you can shift some of the start and end points around. You just want to be in the right sort of ballpark, and this does a really good job of it. As you can see then, I suppose that's another thing to bear in mind. If you do two fingers in here, you can see as I can move it around like I could do with my other waveform viewer. So if you're trying to be very accurate about where your slicing points are, you can do it in here. And as you can probably hear in the background, if you're looking to sort of preview your slice, I can just tap on it. Just like that, very, very handy. Yeah, so that's super cool. You can do things manually. So let's just say you want to just do all your chops yourself. Just take this out. And these little slice markers, as you can see, as I just tap on this little sort of whatever color you want to call that, like a sort of teal color line at the bottom, I can just add them in just by tapping wherever I want. And if I don't want it, I can just take it back out. The next mode that we've got on the tabs is the equal mode, and what that does is it just splits into equal segments. So if we do two chops, obviously you can see it's sliced in the middle all the way up to 16 chops. Now that's super useful when you do like that kind of J Dilla melodic sample chopping, and what you want to do is you want to come in and take your, like say it was like an old soul loop, you want to work out the BPM, set it to the tempo that you work out the BPM with the sequencer, which I'll show you in the tips and tricks video in more detail. But if you do it like that and then come and slice it, as long as it's set to the right BPM, you'll be able to slice in 16 equal segments, and usually that's going to pick up where the kick and the snare is. This one actually isn't too bad, so this drum loop's probably close to the project BPM. You can see it's almost picked up those 16 parts pretty well. So that's the equal mode. You can set it to whatever you want, and that's super cool as well. Right, so in lazy mode, I have to be honest, I don't really know why this is called lazy mode because I find it the most fiddly and I don't really use it very often, but maybe you'll be completely different. What happens is you press play, it's going to play through the sample, and then using this little red icon tapper here, we're going to just be able to sort of tap in our slice points. I find I miss them most of the time and I never get it right, so I'm not sure why this is lazy, but anyway. I seem to have absolutely no control over that. It's probably just me, but you can do it that way should you require. I very rarely, in fact, I never use that. I'm going to go out on a limb there and just say I never use that feature. Usually I'm just transients, and I kind of generally like to slice things myself where I want them. But yeah, that's cool. So that's the 3 tabs at the top. There are sort of slicing modes. Underneath, we have some extra features that are worth talking about. So keep original, it's kind of what it says. So when we opened this up, we took it from our drum loop that was on one of our pads. And if we slice this now and then we do chop, what it's going to do is it's going to split all of the like little chops that we've got, and it's going to spread them out across our pads. And if we don't keep the original, it's going to split that original pad as like the first one and then slice all the rest from there. Now, if you're worried that you need that original like drum loop for something, then keep original on, because it'll always keep that first pad as the original loop without slicing it, and then start slicing from the pad onwards. You still get your 16 slices and everything else, but just keep that in mind. Like I said in I think possibly the previous video, there is no undo in Koala, so keeping a copy of certain drum loops, certain sounds that you want before you edit them is sometimes useful, because once you've baked in those effects or you've done your slicing, you can't undo it. So yeah, very, very important to keep that in mind. Now, choke groups. I'm going to show you choke groups with a melodic sample in a second, but we can come in here and we can select our choke group. Now, again, very, very useful, because if we slice all of these, put them onto our pads, and then all of a sudden we think, actually, I want these pads to be choking each other and turning each other off, then I need to go in and manually, in the edit window, set all of these to, whatever choke group I desire. And that can just be time-consuming and boring. So thinking ahead and thinking, do I need these to be to like, a choke group? With drums, I generally don't, because I don't mind the drum sounds overlapping a little bit. But with something melodic, which I'll show you in a second, we'll pick a choke group and I'll talk about it a little bit more. But know that that function is here now, and it's worth using before you split it to all of your pads. And we've got like 6 choke groups we can choose from, so there's plenty. One shot is as simple as that. It's either going to split them just as they are, and you'll have to hold each pad to make it play through. Or if you put it into one-shot mode, it's going to just play every single sample as a one-shot. I generally find I have that set, particularly for melodic things, because I want to be able to like bounce through the pads and create new rhythms. I don't want to be having to like hold the pads as I'm trying to work it out. So one-shot mode is usually my go-to. Play through. Actually, I have to be honest, I'm not 100% sure what that does. Maybe we can work out as we're here. That's one thing I haven't really used. So let's chop our sample. So this is going to now split our 16 pads through. Let's see what playthrough does. So I can see just by splitting that there, the playthrough. Oh, I see. Okay, I guess, we all learn something new every day. So it looks like when you split and you have playthrough enabled, what it's going to do is it's going to play the rest of the sample from that slicing point, if that makes sense, rather than just the slice itself. I hadn't actually noticed that before, so it's kind of interesting for me to learn something as we're going through. However, I don't think I would ever particularly use that. It's a bit messy, and it's obviously created like a bunch of stuff here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you how to do the same thing again with a melodic sample, so we can talk about choke groups and stuff like that. So let's clean up all of this stuff. And as I said, we can grab a few pads at a time here to just get rid of things we don't want. But you can see, because we kept the keep original on, that our original drum loop was still there. So again, keep that feature in mind. So let's try it with this melodic sample instead. This is a loop. I created the loop myself. I know it's like 4 bars and all that kind of thing. I'm going to go back into the auto chop function. And you can see sometimes when it's trying to do it by the transient, look how many chops, like 72 chops. It's kind of a good example, actually, because it'll tell you here that there's not enough free pads, which, again, is pretty clever. I don't want anything like that. In fact, I'm just going to chop it in a few places myself just to do this demonstration. Let's just chop it where these kind of main sort of transients are. And I don't know, maybe like this little bit here and a bit here. Doesn't really matter. I'll keep the original file. I want to set this to a choke group because it's melodic. I want each sample to turn the other sample off, and I'll demonstrate that in a second. So whenever you're setting a choke group, If it's for a sample that you want to do exactly that, then you need to set them all to the same choke group, which is why it's offering you it here as you're like slicing it up. I'm going to set these to choke group 1 because it's the first one. Then I want to have these as one-shots. I'm going to turn this playthrough off. That is interesting, the playthrough, but I don't see me using it very often. And then do chop like this. So now when we go through our like slices, you can see that it's kept our original file. And now our little chops here, if you'll notice, I won't be able to play 2 of these at the same time. You can see it's only let me play 1. They are also, if we go through our little settings here, if you just want to check, they are set to one-shots because we enabled that when we sliced them up. And that's kind of the view. So if we played like a little drum sequence like this, let's see if this, we set this to one-shot in a loop for a second. And then we just play this. You can see there that I can't play 2 of those pads. And when you're doing that kind of melodic sort of hip-hop dilla, however you want to, call it, that kind of like style of like sample chopping, that's what I generally want. If I have my choke group set, and I can still edit all of this, remember that everything comes back to this edit window here. So if I pick this first slice, for example, it's a one-shot. If I don't want it to be a one-shot anymore, I can get rid of that. I could reverse that here. I can still come in and edit where it starts and where it stops. And in the tips and tricks video even, I will be showing you how I kind of manipulate samples like on the go and do stuff like that. But yeah, I've still got full functionality here. I could loop this little bit. I can do whatever I want. I can play with the tone. And just, yeah, generally sort of manipulate that how I want. Remember that we can do all of that. So, yeah, if I want to change the choke group, let's say that for whatever reason, I want all of these to be playing in one choke group and like turning each other off. But for some reason, I've got this particular sample that I want to be able to just trigger whenever I want over the top of all the audio. I could simply turn this off, or I could set it to a completely different choke group. And the reason you've got choke groups is because sometimes you're going to have more than one sort of like melodic thing like this playing through. And I don't want to be playing with like another sample here and it's going to be affecting any of these pads and like choking any of these. I just want it to choke whichever ones I need it to. So I could set like another bunch of samples here to like choke group 2, 3. You get the idea. So that's kind of choke groups. I just wanted to touch on that a little bit more while we were here. And I think that will do us for today's episode. It was mainly just to look at the Samurai function. If you're not sure if you have the Samurai function set, just go into your settings. Or like if you've paid for the Samurai version or whatever it is, it should say in here in the extras tab that it's installed. But yeah, I think that will do us for today. Hope you guys have enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next episode.